Hey, what's up and hello. This is everybody's second favorite professor coming at you live on tape with another tutorial video. So today we're going to continue off of the previous tutorial in lesson 1. We're now going to move on to lesson 2, which will be going over a clipping mask in Animate. Very similar to Photoshop, Illustrator. You can create clipping masks in Animate, meaning an object is going to be clipped by another object. In this case, we're going to use our name still. So in Animate, when you go to Window and you go to Scene, you have Scene 1 by default. Now, Scene 1 is going to be the first scene we make, which is this letters coming in at different angles. But we want to make a new scene because we want to keep our same library assets. And we don't want to delete what we already did. So we're going to make a new scene by clicking on the add scene. So as you can see, when you make a new scene, it automatically labels it as scene, the next scene. And then it clears the stage, but it keeps the library assets. So we can jump back to scene 1, or we can go to scene 3 in this instance. So what we're going to do now on scene 3 is we're going to start with layer 1, frame 1. And like before, we're going to first give our timeline some space to breathe. So I'm going to click at 120 frames or 10 seconds, hit F5, so that now this animation has at least 10 seconds worth of frames to be utilized. So much like before, instead of having all our letters come in separately, I'm going to put them all on one layer. So that then I'm going to highlight these. I'm going to use the align tool, align them to center, and then I'm going to put them together like so. Even though that they're separate objects, you're going to be all on one layer. So when we go to insert, create classic tween, it's going to convert it to symbols. And then it's going to make them, again, all one layer. So now I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to call this, double click on this, call this the clip layer. Now I'm going to drag out a rectangle. Now when you're drawing a rectangle, make sure you're on your properties panel and make sure that your stroke is set to no fill or no stroke. And the fill color really doesn't matter. It can be any color you want. So I'm going to drag out a rectangle roughly the size to cover up the actual name. So I'm going to click on the clip layer, right click and go to mask. Now what that does is automatically, whatever layer is directly beneath it, it's going to automatically clip it. So what a clipping mask does in this instance is when the rectangle, in this case the blue rectangle, is over top of the letters, it's going to show it. So in order to have a motion, I'm going to go to insert. I'm going to create classic tween on this layer. And I'm going to unlock it. So when you lock it, you'll see it. When you unlock it, you don't see the clipping mask. So I'm going to set the motion to where I'm going to have it here off the scene. And then I'm going to have it do a 4-second transition from left to right. It's going to not stop at all. So when I lock back the layer, as you can see here, click back on layer 1, frame 1. I'm going to hit enter to play it. And as you can see, once it crosses over, it shows the actual letters underneath. Now, if we were to do this before, we would have to right click and I'm going to go to clear keyframe to set it back to 0. So in this instance, I'm going to put it at 1 second. It's going to take to transition over. 2 seconds for it to stay static. So at frame 36, hit F6 to manually insert a keyframe. And then at 4 seconds, I'm going to drag it off the scene. So in this case, it did the same thing similar to before, where it transitions onto the stage, stays static, transitions off. So that's how you do a clipping mask. Whenever an object is over top of something else, that's when you can see it, but only when the lock is active. So you have to unlock it to manipulate it. But when you lock it back, you'll be able to see that it actually is being clipped. And that is how you create a clipping mask using 2 layers in Animate. Please stay tuned from our next tutorial going over how to create a custom path.